24. I tried making a proposal asterisk. How about doing it with my mouth? Huh. Time goes back several hours. 3 days after Saikaira successfully eliminated the obstacles interfering with his work, and was thoroughly scolded by Aresh in the process. As usual, after being escorted away once work ended and having dinner together, Saikaira found himself in a room at a certain inn. He was not alone. Of course, Aresh, who had just been dining with him, was there as well. Going back a bit further, to dinner earlier that evening, Aresh first apologized for his subordinate's misconduct. "I'm sorry my men caused you trouble." Even though it was a private establishment with no other customers present, being bowed to by the commander of the Third Night Order, who bore responsibility for the nation, made Saikaira panic. "No, that matter has already been settled. And more importantly, you treated me, Commander Indrak. Please raise your head." There were no other guests at Aresh's hideaway restaurant at this hour. But from behind the partition, the chef, who had once worked at Aresh's estate, and his wife were clearly watching. "No. It was my failure to supervise." Well, that was true, but from everything so far, Saikaira knew that Aresh had never really supervised his subordinates to begin with. "To be honest, I never expected that kind of oversight from Commander Indrak in the first place." The words slipped out unintentionally, but Aresh seemed to swallow his reaction, though his temple twitched slightly. As long as they promised to follow the accounting rules from now on, I'd say the result was good. Rather than an apology, if anything, it's I who owe you one, Commander Indrak. "You owe me?" Aresh finally lifted his head, looking puzzled, and now it was Saikaira's turn to frown. Was this man truly treating his medical care as something completely natural and expected? "It's about my treatment, the poisoning incident before and this time as well, and the various other small things. You refused before, but at the very least, please allow me to pay you for the magical treatment." The last time he had proposed this, Aresh had focused not on the healing magic, but on the treatment afterward for mana intoxication, exploding in anger. "Are you trying to treat me like a male prostitute by offering money?" So this time, Saikaira emphasized magical treatment in particular. "But this time it was because of my men's failure. Even so, it's a fact that you saved my life. Twice. And on top of that, you even proposed casting a barrier for me. I only know the general market rates for magic, but at the very least, if you don't accept the compensation I'm receiving this time, there was no point in me extracting it." "Extracting? You did that for?" Aresh wasn't unaffected by the fact that the majority of the money taken from his own subordinates would now be paid to him. It was true that healing magic was expensive, especially when it involved life-threatening injuries or illness like Saikaira's. Still, Aresh felt that more than half of what he had done had been voluntary. But if accepting the money would put Saikaira at ease, then he decided he would accept it. He himself was not in financial difficulty. And so the setting shifts to the inn. Not exactly a luxury establishment, but well-equipped, each room with its own bath and well-trained staff. It was apparently also used by high officials for discreet meetings. I mentioned the barrier before, but it acts like protective clothing, shielding your body from mana and miasma. With added enhancements, it can also repel physical contact beyond a certain threshold, in other words, violence. That's incredibly convenient. However, it was difficult magic and few could use it. Aresh, said to be a genius of his generation, could. But the problem was the amount of mana required. The more mana used, the more likely Saikaira would suffer mana intoxication. So instead of casting it all at once, I'm thinking of layering it gradually, like applying membranes one by one. Saikaira didn't understand the theory at all, but presumably it meant casting a small barrier, letting the mana settle, then casting another and repeating. He wasn't sure which method would burden Aresh more, but if they did it this way, it would also resolve something that had been bothering him. So, with a serious expression, he looked up at Aresh and spoke. "How about doing it with my mouth?" And thus, the conversation returns to the beginning. While Aresh stood frozen, Saikaira explained the concern he'd had for some time. "On the 2 previous occasions when you performed large-scale treatment and alleviated my mana intoxication, Commander Indrak, I was practically unconscious both times and left everything to you, wasn't I?" After being treated from near unconsciousness, Saikaira had remained mostly dazed from mana intoxication. In other words, he had been completely passive. "Even though I'm the one being treated, I felt it improper to place all the burden on you alone. With penetration, if the other party doesn't cooperate, It puts considerable strain on the one doing it. Moving someone who's nearly unconscious is difficult, and all the preparation falls to one side. All that was really necessary was skin contact to let the mana settle. Because the mana had been excessive and Saikaira had fallen into acute intoxication, urgent ejaculation into his body had become the chosen method. But this time, taking things slowly to let it settle gradually was possible. In fact, minor stomachaches or headaches had subsided with simple touches or kisses. Still, asking Aresh to gradually infuse such a large amount of mana would take too much time and effort. And while being treated, it was strange that all the burden rested solely on Aresh. If he was the one receiving treatment, then surely he should be the one to provide service. And to be honest, as a desk-working middle-aged man, he found enduring the unpleasantness of swallowing more manageable, work-wise, than being penetrated. And so, Aresh was now sitting on the bed, with Saikaira straddling him. In that position, Aresh cast the barrier spell on him. Barrier was a composite spell of 3 attributes: light, wind, and wood. Like healing magic, it had few practitioners. As he listened to Aresh's chant like a song and felt a gentle breeze envelop his body, a slight heaviness and warmth spread through him. But his consciousness remained clear, and he could move freely. "No problem. How do you feel?" "No problem." "Then could you close your eyes?" With a resigned expression, Aresh closed his eyes. The striking violet gaze disappeared, long lashes accentuating his refined face before Saikaira. He looked somewhat younger with his eyes closed, Saikaira thought, as he leaned forward and pressed his lips to Aresh's perfectly sculpted mouth. His hand slid down along Aresh's well-trained abdominal muscles. He had thought touching a man's member with full awareness might bother him, but surprisingly, it didn't. Since it would be tiring to rely on his mouth from the start, efficiency-minded Saikaira had first proposed using his hand to stimulate Aresh. On top of that, to efficiently let the mana settle, he conceived of intertwining their tongues while caressing him. "It's basically my first time doing this sober. I'm a little embarrassed, but this is treatment. For work. Telling himself that, he kept his skin pressed close and their tongues entwined as he stroked Aresh. Incidentally, he had asked Aresh to close his eyes in hopes that he might at least imagine a woman to help himself get aroused. "NNG, huh? Commander Indrak, does it feel good?" "Don't call me that." Hearing Aresh's voice falter, Saikaira judged things were progressing well and resumed kissing him while moving his hand. "Kondu, your first name was Saikaira, wasn't it?" "Huh. Yes." Hearing his difficult-to-pronounce name spoken, Saikaira pulled back in surprise. Seeing those violet eyes, clearly clouded with desire, staring directly at him made his body stiffen. "Do you know my name?" Saikaira wasn't foolish enough to call him by his family name here. "Aresh-sama." Aresh narrowed his eyes in satisfaction for a moment, then leaned in to kiss him again. Saikaira closed his eyes as well,